Hey guys, welcome back to Heart of the Hero, Tools for Successful Minds. I'm Dan, got Greg here. We're going to get into talk about some good things today. What are we talking about, Greg?
Today, we are talking about patience. And if you guys are watching this from 2018, Happy New Year.
Happy New
Welcome back. If
Year.
you're repeat it, right? Wish I had one of those little pinwheel spinners or yeah. So
Why we
today,
didn't get one of
we're
those?
kind of getting into patience. And this gets overlooked. And maybe you started the new year with some ideas about what you want, or some ideas about where you want to go, or where you want to take your business or your life, your relationship, right? And all these things are great and they're helpful and they feel good to plan and start to set out on. But the one thing that you will need is to learn how to be patient. And we're going to get into what that means, because there's this attachment, there's this connotation that people have when they hear patience of like this monk sitting, not doing anything, kind of waiting for everything to happen. Not that. So drop that. Because today we're going to talk about patience in a little bit of a new way that kind of is going to give you some tools that you can use to cultivate it and actually use it to push you towards your goals. It seems passive, but it's actually going to be something that you can use to move you towards things that you want.
Yeah, I think often people think patience, means a lack of urgency. And, in some ways, I think we're going to get into how that's true, but also I think in some ways we're going to get into how that's not true because, though patience, is important, it's also important what you're doing while you're being patient. I think it's, and so we're going to get into a little bit of that and a little bit about how you can, mentally stress yourself out by being impatient and how that can actually be unproductive.
Yeah. So maybe you want to walk some of the listeners into some of the signs, right? Because I can think of some of my own personal signs, right? Some of the kind of things that I have, the little quirks, right, that let you know that you're not particularly being patient, right? You're not maybe a patient person in that moment, right? In those moments. But what are some telltale ways? What are some surefire ways that maybe a person could kind of take mental stock of the fact that they're usually overwhelmingly not patient when they need it most? How would they know that right now?
Well, I think check your stress level, because often, we associate grinding and working towards our goals and trying to achieve, the things that we want. We associate that with like, oh man, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be stressful. I'm gonna be worked to my bone. Oh man, I don't know how I'm gonna take this. And we kind of like anticipate this like, dread of what it's gonna be like, and when you're in it, you're kind of working and you're just like, man, I can't wait until I'm done with this. Can't wait until I'm done with this. And a lot of it, a lot of that like kind of stress that you put on yourself is kind of self-induced, often, you can find yourself like, say, just for instance, you're in school and you're getting a degree, or you already have a degree and you've probably experienced this where, you're 2 years in, or you're a year in, you're a semester in, you're working through these classes and it's tough. You're actually having to put forth a lot of effort. You're actually having to, really grind through it. And your life is a little more busy and demanding than you might want it. And that's not necessarily where you're aiming in your future for your life to be that demanding. Maybe that's what you're starting a business. And so you're putting a lot of this grind and this effort up front, and what can happen is the impatience that we talk about here is more of the stressing yourself out in the moment, because by thinking about the fact that you don't have what you want right now, you want it right now and you want everything that you're looking for and you're trying to get there and you're working, you're putting in the effort. And sometimes we can get mentally impatient because we're just like, oh man, I want this right now. I'm so tired of doing this. I'm so tired of going to my classes. I'm so tired of doing all this stuff. And it's like, you can kind of allow yourself to, stress yourself out and realize that like, look, there's not really anything else you can do. You just focus on the fact that what you're doing is what you need to be doing, so being patient is, we're not really going to cover this in the way that you might be used to hearing. I'm not going to tell you to sit back on the couch and do nothing. I'm not going to tell you to, oh yeah, don't worry about it, watch an hour of Netflix a day, it's totally fine, you just got to be I'm not going to tell. It's going to be a little different take because there's a difference between being impatient and having a sense of urgency. And I think those are two distinctions that need to be separated, because I don't want to get anybody confused here. We're on the grind daily. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm anxious to, have certain things that I've wanted in my life, but there's a tendency for me, and I know Greg's gone through this at some point, and we, and all of us, that when we're working, we start to get kind of frustrated that what we want isn't already here, and
Right.
that kind of just can cause some some unneeded stress, a lot of overthinking, overanalyzing things that are just stressing you out, and kind of being on your loop in your head about things that aren't really in your control.
Well, and maybe you've been in a situation, if you're hearing this now, where to where you have things that you're working towards right now, right? Like you said, and you're waiting for it to kind of show up, right? For the day when you kind of, make the money or meet the person, or you're waiting for this day, right? This event, this thing that's supposed to happen that will like change everything. And I think one of the big things to notice that maybe a person could start to notice about how it actually works to be and feel patient, right? Is it's kind of an awareness of the fact that you are going, right? It's the urgency can be there, right? The urgency can kind of sit at the bottom of the shelf and really fuel your drive. But the thing that you will know when you learn how to cultivate a strong, deep understanding and mental awareness of how patient you are is that a lot of that event driven, like, tomorrow this has to happen, or I'm a failure, or, I'm not pushing hard enough, or a lot of those things, they kind of fall away because you're aware on some level that they will happen, right? They will happen. They will show up because you're doing the best that you can in the moments that you are in right now, right? And so I think the distinction between that level of urgency, it even goes deeper than that, in the sense that there's a kind of feeling attached to that when you're in this kind of anxiety, angsty, like, I need instant, give me, like, this has to happen, versus the kind of, it's more of a palpable, strong sense of urgency, but you're also not tied to it, right? You're not tied to the outcomes. You're not tied to this has to happen. You're open to it and you're working towards it as hard as you can. But I think it's a little bit of a different thing. And maybe some of the listeners or someone who's thinking that they might want to gain, right? They might want to gain some patience, can actually identify with that in a way that may line up with some of their own experiences. I mean, it at least lines up with my own experiences as far as I remember it.
Well, and I remember there was a time when, especially towards the beginning of your times grinding and really moving towards things that you want, where you kind of hit this place where, you've not quite gained the momentum you maybe want yet, and your things aren't really falling into place as fast as you may want. And you're thinking that things were going to happen, faster than they are. And so one of the things I noticed, at least in my own personal journey, was I would find myself unable to relax a lot. I was where there was even at times where I had kind of like planned to relax and not do anything and just focus on me and enjoying the day or enjoying the free time that I had. Even on those times, I'd find that I could never really relax. When I was with my friends or family, I was constantly just buzzing about all these things that I had to do, and 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 I had to do, because like, I to me, these things were connected. If I don't do these things, then I'm not going to be successful. And so in that, I realized that I have to, that's an impatience there that comes there, that I realized that's really just this kind of need and want and craving. It's a weakness of mind. It's really just, it's you allowing your mind to wander over topics that you've already closed before in your head. You've already know what you need to do to change all these things. It's you just running through all the reasons why you're upset about your life and all the reasons why you want what you want, but you kind of have just decided to lose sight of the fact that you're actually doing what you need to do to get there. And so like, and I think some of the, so when you start to see yourself kind of unable to rest mentally about what it is you're doing, there's some things that it could mean, it could mean that you're not actually planning well enough, and you actually aren't doing everything that you need to be doing. That's an option, right? Like maybe you actually have some healthy worry in there that's trying to make sure that's true. Make sure that, you actually check yourself and that you're actually doing things. But like, another is if you're actually getting stressed in these times where you're not meant to be stressed and you should be able to let go, that's kind of a sign that you one of the signs that, can point to you being too impatient of a person and focusing on things that aren't necessarily important to focus on at the moment. You've lost sight, you've lost mental fortitude. You're not focusing on what you need to focus on, and that causes this kind of anxiety. It's like an anxiety is another kind of symptom. If you constantly if your heart rate's constantly, jumping up through the roof, and you're feeling high blood pressure and, tension in your knuckles and your joints, and you just have to pace the room, and if you're feeling things like that, an overwhelming kind of like flow of thoughts, you probably need to like relook at the things that you're focusing on, because some of that can come from this impatience in your life, where you've maybe just at a place where you've decided that you want to start doing things, and you've made changes, and you're kind of working every day to do things, but it's not happening as fast as you want. Well, I mean, for one, the first question I ask is there anything else that you could be doing to help that feeling? Like, are you actually slacking, and do you need to pick it up? But like, another question is like, are you focusing on what you need to be focusing on? Because, being impatient can stress you out and give you this anxiety. And when you're in that mode and you're seeing those symptoms, you're not very productive. You're not very like efficient. You're not learning well. You're not producing well. You're not performing well, because you're in your head and you're constantly just being attacked by all these thoughts, and this reaction from these thoughts is just this stress, And so I think those are a lot of signs that I noticed along my journey when I was, especially first starting out.
Well, and I think it can even crawl into your personal life in a deep way. When you're saying that, I was remembering kind of in my own experience, I had a really kind of visceral experience with impatience, in the sense of I would be places, but I wouldn't actually be there, right? And you might identify with this. Maybe someone who's listening identifies with this. It's that sensation where, like, you got a bunch of people around you, or you're at a birthday party, or you're with a friend, or you're with your spouse, your lover, or whatever it is, right? Like you're with other people doing other things, and here, right, you're not aware. You're either you're planning the next move. You're like, oh, I gotta take my kid to soccer, or tomorrow I gotta do this or whatever, and it's like there's this urgency. But not in a good way, right? It's like an anxiety need to push the moment forward beyond what it is. And I don't mean that in like a metaphysical sense. I mean, actually, it's almost like you lose the ability to understand that you can't do more than you can do. I mean, you can't actually do more than you can do, right? You're doing the one thing that you're doing right now. Why aren't you doing that? Like, why aren't you present with that? Why aren't you actually doing the best? Because if you wanted to do the other thing, why didn't you just go do that, right? So there's this kind of separation in the mind, right, where you categorize things, and you think that they're important to you, and you say that they're important to you, and they matter to you, right? But then you get this kind of gnawing impatience about, well, I want to be doing this instead. Like, I want to be here instead. Well, I wish this would happen instead. Or, well, I need to go, right? And so it's like it's a negative thing, not only because you're missing your life that way, because you're always trying to jump to the next step, but it's also even deeper than that, because it creates this root level stress, right? It creates this kind of these feelings, because of the fact that you're always trying to look one step ahead, right? So think about it like this: if you're at your kid's soccer practice, and you're thinking about, I need to do this for my business, I need to upload this here, I need to show up here, I need to call this person, I need to go have an interview, right? And your kid's doing soccer or whatever it is, right? And in those moments, what would happen? What might happen to you mentally, right? What might happen to you mentally if that impatience in you overtakes you, and then you don't get to do the thing that you're planning, right? So you don't get to make the call in the next hour. You don't get to go to the place. You're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. You're going to be angry. You're going to be screaming. You're going to be, squeezing your knuckles. You're going to be screaming at your kid. You're going to be arguing with yourself and saying, I should have done this. I should have done this. I should have done this. But you didn't do it because you were not patient with your time, right? You were not a good steward of your own energy, so to speak. Like, you can't see what you're doing, right? So I think the idea that you can't do more than you can do is something that people should internalize. And that's not to, because I know where people go with that. I know you'll go with that and say, yeah, I can't do more than I can do. You'll kick back, have a beer, lay down. That's not what I mean. When you're slacking. When you're not doing all that you can do. But what I'm saying is, all that you can do is all that you can do.
Well, and that's where, this is kind of a topic that's more for somebody who's already kind of been doing this for a minute, already kind of pushing and on the grind, because this doesn't really make sense to somebody who's at the beginning. It might seem like an obvious statement, like, oh yeah, of course I'll have to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight. It already says it's going to take a few years. So, I know I got to be patient, of course. But when you're actually in it, and you're actually studying every day, and you're reading every day, and you're working every day, and you're project oriented every day, You know, there's a different level of stress that comes. There's a different level of pressure and intensity that picks up in your life. And that's a good thing, because that means it's growing you as a person. One thing I learned was that I would get this kind of, because we're getting away from patience here, but I think we kind of have to talk about this to build up to it, really, where you know, I remember times where I would think that I was at my wit's end. I would think I was, you know, I was burning it at both ends of the candle. I thought I was giving it all I could do. And I was telling myself that. I was just like, well, you know, you did something, you know, you just got to be patient. You know, you just got to be patient, you know, you did something today, you did that, so that's fine. You just got to be patient, you know, and keep going, which is true. But what wasn't true was that I was actually doing everything that I could do to make that outcome manifest as quickly as it possibly could, and as in the way that I wanted it. Because what I realized shortly after was that I was like, man, I gotta work harder. This is gonna take too long. I was like, I gotta work harder. So I added a couple more processes into my daily process, a couple more things that I had to do, and then it stressed me out, and I was freaking out, angry, impatient, thinking about how, why isn't this already here? I don't want to have to do this, going through all this stuff and going through the suffering that people don't often want to put themselves through, because they think it's just suffering. But what it really is growth. And so you get to a point where you kind of go through this growth until you can push yourself, until you actually find a limit where you can't do anymore. Like, you actually can't do anymore. And I would say that most of us aren't there. You know, I'd say that most of us, even including myself, sometimes do not do as much as I actually could do, you know, and for whatever excuse, for whatever reason you have, you know, you could be dedicating more time to this, and I'm sure you could. So this is a place where you can kind of, you know, put yourself into this sleep mode where I'm just being patient. You know, I'm doing stuff. I just got to do it daily. I can be patient. Well, that's true, but be patient when you've reached your wit's end. Be patient when you know that you're giving everything that you give, and anything more is unnecessarily doable. You know what I mean? And even the stuff that I found out was undoable, you know how I found out that it was undoable to do more? I was trying to do more. That's how I kind of came to the realization, was like, you know, I really can't, I have so many things now that I'm actually dropping the ball in some areas here, and I need to focus. And actually, because I'm getting so impatient, I want to do everything at once. I'm not actually giving the things in front of me the attention that they need, you know, and that's just making me take more time. You know, it's kind of a lean six, you know, theory here, where, you know, you want to do these small batch things where, you know, you have your processes built up as much as that you can actually handle and produce quality. Because anything else is, if you try and you can't accomplish it without it causing problems in your life, then that's the level that you're at. And then you then learn to be patient, because now you know you're doing everything you need to be doing. And then you can kind of say, okay, I can't do anything else more than this. I've tried multiple times. I've grown. I've done a lot. Now I'm even doing more. Right now, this is all I can handle. Then you be patient. Then drop all this worry about the future, because you're sitting here worried about the future and still wondering, well, it's not coming. It is coming. You're doing it. You're doing everything you can, but you're mentally focusing on it after you're kind of reached that point, like, okay, where is it?
Right.
Well, it's coming. You're doing it. Like, that's when you need to be patient, like, because you're actually doing what you need to do to get it there. Like, and part of that really just depends on how bad you want it. How bad do you want what you're going for? Like, how inspired do you get by what it is that you're planning on doing with your life? You know, like, because that determines a lot on how much you actually are considering giving to this project in the first place. You know, and so that if you're not prepared to fully give yourself, you're going to find yourself in a pretty frustrating place, because you're only given 10% and you're expected 90, you know? And so I think it's important to, they're conflicting ideas. Yeah.
It's that conflict, and you know this. I know you know it internally, because I do, and we kind of went through a lot of the same stuff moving through this, right? There's this conflict in how much of yourself that you give. Because, you know, you mentioned that you're going to have to give of yourself, right? Give from yourself, create, you know, go do, take action, be a little bit uncomfortable, right? And there's kind of this knowing that you get. It's this understanding that, like, okay, the conflict is between, I want to give of myself. I want to give the most that I can. I want to do the best that I can. I want to be the best that I could be. I want to push myself to the limit every day, because I want to actually move myself closer to my goals and move my goals closer to me. But on the other hand, there's this war with yourself about whether or not you're sure if you're actually doing enough. And a lot of times that's self-inflicted, right? You're doing 6, 7 things, and you could be doing 10, but you've decided that if you did 10, you'd be super stressed out. So you're doing 6. Well, you're constantly thinking, I should be doing more. I should be doing this. Like, okay, no, you make the decision and you act on the decision, right? So if you want to do more, start doing more. There's no police guarding your efforts, right? You have the ability to change your level of effort. You can reduce it, you can raise it, you can talk to more people, you could talk to less people, you could go out more, you could, do more business stuff. You have control of your life in that way, right? But what a lot of times happens is people, they don't want to actually break out of their patterns. And maybe this isn't you, right? Maybe this is just someone that you know, but it might not be. You might be the person who wants to push themselves to the next level, right? But somehow, somewhere in your mind, maybe there are these barriers, there are these breakpoints that you're not able to get around because you're thinking, right? You're thinking that there's something that you need to go to. That's not true. You don't need to go anywhere. You need to be doing the most that you can where you are right now. And what that means is if there's a business thing that you want to do, start doing it, right? If there's a person you want to talk to, start talking to them, right? If there's some kind of activity that you want to go join it. Like, you can do these things at any point in time, right? And so this kind of like anxiety, like, I don't know if I'm doing enough, I'm afraid, like, is this going to be enough, am I a failure, that all goes away when you stop thinking about it all the time and you stop ruminating about it all the time and you just start taking the actions you can right there. So that's what I mean, and that's what I meant earlier when I say doing all that you can do. You don't really have time to not be patient, because you have to be patient because you can see your results being created as you're doing them.
Yeah, and that's that sense of urgency that I was talking about mentioning is that you need to have a sense of urgency. Like, this is about success. This is about succeeding in whatever we choose to do in our lives. And so, there is a sense of urgency where if you're not prone to just, if you're not the type of person that just and then just goes and starts doing them automatically, like those really annoying people with really good grades that just had really good discipline growing up, I guess. But they just decide something and it's like, okay, I'm doing this now. I don't need any type of motivation or process. I'm just going to read all these books and just go through and finish all this stuff in a week. No big deal. Well, I wasn't one of those. I was one that you actually had to get a little bit going. I took a little bit more inspiration to actually get doing things, and it took a long time to build a good study habit and with a healthy dose of urgency in me to put myself in a place where I was actually working and putting all that I could put into it, because it was urgency. It was urgency because I knew visually and observationally that I was not doing everything that I needed to do. So I urgently needed to get as many processes as I could implemented into my day-to-day so that I knew that my future is taken care of. Whereas I'm not getting impatient. Impatience implies it's almost this level of regret where you kind of are so frustrated and so emotionally fed up with dealing with your life situation that you can't even stand to be here. You'd rather sit here and stress about the fact that your life it's this kind of like attachment. It's this mental weakness, this lack of emotional fortitude, and that's tough, and that's tough for people to swallow sometimes. But it's true in a lot of senses, because we often just focus on incorrect things, focus on unproductive things without them going unchecked, and emotions, and we call that things that we focus on things that cause emotions that are unproductive and unhelpful and can change nothing, So like really, your impatience and the amount of stress that it causes in your life is a reflection of your own mental and emotional fortitude. And if that's something that you're having constant trouble dealing with, which is just being patient and accepting where you are while having a healthy dose of urgency, then you need to put some time into some like emotional healing, learning to master your emotions, control your mind and control your thoughts. And that's not a spiritual or hokey process. That's a scientific, psychological, and physiological process. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's rewiring the way your brain works. It's possible. People do it every day. Therapists are teaching it now. I teach it every time I talk to somebody. And so if you're in a place where patience is constantly an issue for you, you need to check your emotional and mental fortitude, because that just means you're focusing on things you don't need to be focusing on and reacting to them poorly. And you just created something for you to stumble over, when if you had the mental fortitude to just be patient, accept that you're doing what you're doing and we'll get there as soon as I can, as long as I'm doing as much as I can, then you're kind of in this place where you're not dealing with things correctly. And we got other videos, and if we haven't done one on controlling your emotions or controlling your thoughts, I'm sure we're going to. But other videos we talk about some of these base level controlling your mind, creativity and things like that, and focus, getting yourself into good positions mentally and things that you think about to get your area of your mind and your emotions at a place that keeps you focused on good things and productive and motivating things, rather than maybe just like anxious and self-destructive thoughts and tendencies.
And I think those self-destructive thoughts and tendencies can grow into problems, because they don't start as problems. I mean, you could have a self-destructive thought or tendency, or maybe you're thinking something that's uncomfortable or whatever, and it could just pass, and that's fine. That happens every day. Maybe you're talking to someone and they kind of piss you off. It's okay, right? It's not a bad thing. But when they kind of continue, they become problems. They become these really root level, deep underlying problems, and they really undermine your effort to change your own life, to sort of take control of where you're at emotionally, spiritually, mentally, whatever it is for you. Like you lose that ability, and I don't mean it gets covered up. I mean you lose it, because you actually what happens is you have this undercurrent, right? You have this undercurrent of all these habits and things that you built up that are not positive, that are negative, that are kind of dragging you down into the mire, right? You're in the swamp and you can't breathe. And what happens is when you kind of start to move beyond those things, right? You put yourself on this, personal development journey or business journey, or whatever it is, just to better yourself, to become the best version of yourself, and you put effort into that. You start to kind of go down into that swamp and kind of feel through the muck and see what's supposed to go and what's supposed to stay, right? And so a lot of these processes, like the cognitive, mental, emotional stuff, it's really not about the practices, right? It's not about like this has to happen this way. It's more about you finding out how to actually upgrade how to actually make yourself feel better, how to actually be happier, how to be more positive, how to move in a better direction on the daily, so you actually feel better about who. I think one of the big things to maybe make people aware of, and you might have more insight on this than me, what are like the long game effects of this, right? Like how might a person, because maybe they've been in a space where they're not patient and they're not happy and they're not whatever, right? And they're not moving, maybe they're moving towards their goals, but they could put a little more effort into it. What happens if they kind of flip the switch here, right? And they maybe, some of the practices we'll talk about in a minute, they apply them. What's going to happen in their own life, in their personal life, in their family life, in their feelings, and what might be some of the implications of kind of switching to that more patient, more present, more active, urgent mindset?
I think it's probably going to reflect in the way that you interact with what you're doing. That's probably the first thing that comes to my mind is when you've kind of reached this place of acceptance, and with a healthy dose of urgency, when you kind of reach this place where you're not worried so much about where your life's going to go, because you know where it's going, you know what you're doing, you kind of reach that patient, urgent, doing the most you can do mindset. I think you'll start to notice that your interactions with people will change a lot. Like, your friends will see you kind of be more present and having fun with your friends and able to let go. Your family you'll probably see and talk to your family a little bit more, because you're not so stressed out that you don't need a minute and you can talk to them. You're like, oh yeah, I'll give them a call. And, you'll probably be working harder or better at work, be more present, focused, and aware there. Your managers will probably notice, like, you'll notice, there's a lot of areas that you'll notice, because it's not the lack of patience is not the problem. It's the symptom of the lack of patience that's a problem, which is the anxiety and the stress that comes with that. And so when you reduce that anxiety and stress, anybody would admit that if you reduce anxiety and stress, that you're living a much more pleasant, peaceful life. And I think that applies here. This isn't all your anxiety. This isn't all your stress. So, if you have a lot of that in your life, that's something that you need to pay attention to, be self-aware of, and work on. Maybe check out some of our other videos if it's something that's related to the thing that you're dealing with. But, if you are in a place where you've kind of accepted this, you're going to see a lack of stress, a lack of anxiety, a lack of pressure that you feel, a lack of a weight on your shoulder, and that's going to allow you to kind of feel freer and lighter when in conversations and when communication and actions. Like, you'll even want to work harder. You'll probably have more energy because you're not spending all this mental energy, worrying about what you need to be doing,
Mm. When you say spending all this mental energy worrying about what you need to be doing, how would you describe that to a person who maybe doesn't know what that sensation is even like? Like just the energy part, how it kind of gets expended when you're thinking about whatever, impatient, whatever. What would that look like to someone who might have had that resonate with them, but they're not sure what that actually means?
Have you ever had a day that was just so stressful that you went home and all you were thinking about the whole day at work was cracking open an ice cold beer? Or, smoking a cigarette or rolling a joint, whatever it is you do to unwind.
Yeah.
This is where drugs come into play, because what happens is that you have this mental energy, right? And it's basically your I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's
Right.
it's eventually the amount of fucks that you have to give.
Right.
That's kind of the best way I can describe it. It's like, and I'm not gonna repeat that again. But that's what it is. It's you go wake up and you kind of shell out a couple of them, and then you go to work and you shell out some more, and then like you go home and you shell out some more, and you've only got so many in that bucket to choose from before, like, at the end of the day you're just like, I don't even want to just. That's mental energy, okay? Like the ability to care about something, where you get to that place where you're just so strained and your bucket's like, nothing in there, man. There's just nothing in there. I'm sorry, I don't got anything for you. And so to circle this back, as humorous as it is, I'm serious, is that like with patience, like, you only have you only have so much patience.
I mean, that's a great example. I mean,
you only have so much, and when you're constantly worrying about things so you already pay a couple when you go to work, and you pay a couple to your team members. You get 4 out at work. And what happens is you're sitting there at work or on your way to work, and you're stressing out about something else. Well, there's one. And then you're talking to your team members, but you're also worried and freaking about something else because that reminded you of something you knew. Well, there's 2. And now you've spent almost twice as much as you usually spent at work. You've given in so much of your patience and your time and care that there's not that much left for you at the end of the day. And so I think when you kind of so that mental energy that you get from being patient comes from the lack of activity that you're constantly buzzing over in your head. There's more of a space of relaxation and just kind of flow, like you're just kind of like going through your day and not even worrying about it. You're like, oh, my day is done. Cool. All right, cool. I'll go home now. Because you haven't really had to invest any extra in your day just to get yourself through the day. That takes motivation, that takes energy. Believe it or not, the processes of the brain burns calories. Like, may not be a lot, like you literally are burning like physical energy by constantly going over this in your head. Not only that, but you're like dropping chemicals in your head because you're all stressed, and like dopamine and adrenaline, which is making your heart rate beat faster, which means you're burning off even more calories. You're literally lowering your blood sugar by worrying about things too much.
So don't do that. Stop doing that.
Keep your bucket nice and full.
It is kind of an instinctive thing to just fall into these. We kind of fall into these ruts, right? But I think maybe if you're wanting some of the things that Dan was talking about, the peace, kind of that sense of urgency, but also kind of a calm, cool mental energy that you can kind of spread out as you want, because you have things that you want and the direction that you're going, but you're not impatient about it, right? Maybe a person, maybe there's someone who's hearing this or watching this right now who wants to go in this direction, right? They're like, yeah, this seems like it's better than what I'm doing now. Like, it seems like it would work better than the stress and the unhappiness and it would be a way out. It would be a way out towards the things that they want. What are some real, and this is the key, right? This is maybe if you haven't really been following along as much, really bring your attention into this, because the stuff that we're going to talk about now are kind of the ways, right? They're kind of the things that you could do to actually move towards these benefits, right? You could kind of see some more opportunities in ways that you haven't before to feel better and get more out of your day. What would you say are some of the ways that a person could start to maybe modulate their impatience, grow their level of patience, understand the differences between the two, and really start to rewire the brain, the mind, the body, and all these other things towards doing that consistently in a way that makes them feel better, be urgent, and take more action more often?
You know, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is planning. You know, I've talked about it in other videos a little bit, where or in other episodes where we, you know, often we kind of have a lot that we're doing, but we don't actually have like it planned out and what we're doing. We don't really know how much time we're spending on it, what we're giving most of our efforts to. And so I think probably the biggest way that you could, you know, not the biggest, but the best, maybe, I don't, it may not be the best. It is a good one though, is planning your days out. Is what do you do on a daily basis? You know, what's your daily schedule like? What's your daily process like? Do you have like write down every single thing that it is that you want to do each day? Say it's 2 or 3 things, say it's 3 things that you do a day. Okay. So write down those 3 things and then try to come up with like 3 or 4 more that would also help, right? There are also things that you could think you need to be doing that would be helpful to be doing every day, right? And make sure you hit those 3. Right? Those are important. You hit those 3, but start trying to implement one of those other extras that you added, you know, like those extras that aren't necessarily high priority. You want to look at the priority list here too. Like what needs to be done first? What do I need to be focusing on now? And that's only decided by you and what you actually are doing and the requirements that come with that. So set a priority list of your daily process. Make sure you get your top 3 hitters done, and then try to add one in there at the end. You know what I mean? Like also go at this one, also go at that one, because then what you'll know is you can go at the end of the day and check through this, you know, list, be like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. I made my main 3. And I also did this. What that does for you to remind yourself of that every day is it reminds you like, okay, I am moving. Like I am actually accomplishing things. I am doing things. Like if for me, one of my daily processes is read an hour a day, write an hour a day. And then I think one of the other things is like marketing research right now. And so it's like, so I have 3 things that I do every day, you know, isolated from this podcast and this series is. And so it's like, I have these things. This is an addition. This is kind of the core, but there's other things that I do in addition that I have that I can like go out here. Oh, maybe I'll work on our email list, or maybe I'll look into some social media stuff, or maybe I'll look into some, you know, whatever it is. I have these little extras that I do. And what that does is I can look down and say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done everything that I need to do. And I've done a little extra. That reminds you every day that you are moving, that you are getting things done. Then there's not this sense you're constantly consciously checking in to make sure that you are doing what you need to be doing. Thus, there's never any of this kind of like wondering if you're doing what you need to be doing, and this feeling of kind of like impatience and urgency. That's kind of like stress from it. Like I don't know what to do. Yeah, you do, and you are doing it. And look, you even did a little extra more, you know, a little extra on top of that. So that's, you know, that's one way that helps build this kind of patience of reminding yourself every day that you're working on this. I'm working on this. I'm working on this. I'm working on this. You know, bringing your attention consciously to that every day. That look, I've done this. A website I would like to recommend is that I used for a while to get started, especially, is Chainlinks. It was you that actually I think recommended it to me, and it's essentially just this little like thing where you can type in each category that you're supposed to do daily or weekly. You can set up whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday through Friday, or on the weekends, and you can set all that up. And when that day comes and you do it, you can go in and click this little bubble, and you click. Let's say you did everything on your 5 list. You would go click, 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 click. You know, like you would click all these little bubbles, and they'd be there. And then the next day would come, and whatever 5 you did or whatever days were on there, and it essentially keeps track of it. And you can look visually how many days in a row for months, if you've been going at it for a while, you know, how well you've done, and you're literally tracking your progress in these areas. So things like that are very helpful in reminding yourself consciously each day that you are taking steps and showing yourself, so that you have information in those maybe potential stressful times when you're like, oh man, I'm so tired of this. Am I doing what I need to be doing? You're like, no, yeah, I checked into that yesterday, and I'm going to check into that again after I'm done today. Like, yeah, I've done this, you know, and it can alleviate some of that stress, and it builds this kind of patience of, I'm fine. I'm fine. Like, I'm doing what I need to do. There's no reason to stress myself out about this. Look, I've done all 3 things that I need, that I think are the most important, and I've done something extra. Like, I don't know, do I have some time to do something else here? I mean, it sets yourself up for a lot of like, mentally fortifying exercise. It's a mentally fortifying exercise. It's basically just building the walls of your mind to try to prevent bad thoughts and negative thoughts from creeping in, you know?
Yeah, and I remember doing a lot of that myself with CBT stuff and you know, NLP and, you know, kind of brain stuff, and it's all important and it's all key. Um, touch on a little bit was this idea of high value targets, because you mentioned, you know, kind of setting things that you want to do, and you know, pick three things first, or however that goes, right? Well, you see this in a lot of you see this in a lot of like war movies, assassin movies, you know, like stuff like that, to where there are different levels of you know, targets, right? You know, maybe they're trying to nuke somebody, or, you know, shoot somebody, or whatever it is, you know, but they have to take out a certain person, and it's always very violent, right? But there's different levels, right? Maybe it's a diplomat, president, you know, a club owner. Like, these are different levels of targets depending on what it is that you want to do, right? And this is a little bit of a crude example, but that is what you're doing, right? You are attacking targets every day. That's what you're doing. You're choosing to say, okay, like, I have this, need to go here, 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 here. So the thing you need to start to do as an individual, and I mean, what I mean when I say this is, don't get input from elsewhere. Don't go watch a video about, like, you need to do these things first and this first, or talk to a parent. Don't do that. Look in yourself and say, okay, what do I want? What do I actually want? And today, what are the things that I could do? The high value targets. What are the 2 or 3 things that are most relevant to getting me closer to that as fast as possible, right? And so maybe, you know, for you, it's you know, you're writing in the notebook, or, you know, maybe you have to call a certain person, or maybe you have to go somewhere and buy something to do something the next day. But you're taking concrete steps, and then after you choose to take those concrete steps, you can let go, right? You can relax, because you've actually done the thing that is most important to this, you know, project, or this endeavor, or the thing that you want. So you don't have this. A lot of times the thoughts about, you know, am I doing enough, or I'm impatient, or I wish this was here already, or I wish it was tomorrow, that comes from a place of a defense mechanism, right? It's like, if you're constantly thinking, am I doing enough, you don't ever have to worry about where you're navigating, what the implications are, how it interacts with other people. You can just stay in this constant state of knowing that you're not doing enough, and believing that you're not doing enough, so that you never really have to confront whether or not you're doing enough. So it's like you automatically set yourself up to fail, so that you can feel better when you fail, which it doesn't make sense, right? You would think that that's something that most people don't do, but a lot of people do it, right? So if you catch yourself maybe thinking or feeling sometimes like, oh, you know, I haven't done all my stuff today, don't worry about doing all of it. Put the sense of urgency there. If you can get it all done, do it. Get it. If you can get it all done, jump on it, right? But really focus on these high value targets, the things that are going to bring you the most value, put you closer to your goals the fastest, things that you could really knock out and feel good about because you got them done.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's important. And, you know, it's that builds that momentum, that builds that stamina. You know, the overtime practice of doing things daily is something that builds a fortitude in you. You know, it kind of mentally, emotionally, and stamina wise, and fortifies you and makes you strong, makes you able to withstand kind of some of the pressures of wanting to think negatively or wander in your mind to unproductive places. Yeah, it seems like we often just want to, you know, hide from this and not push ourselves and say, oh, I'm doing enough, I just need to be patient. And that's often sometimes just a mask. I want to just throw that at the end. Like, sometimes you can definitely do more than you are doing. You just don't want to do more than what you're doing. And so often, you know, this process of getting everything mapped out and attacking everything individually really helps put that in plain view for you if there's any kind of discrepancies in what you're saying versus what you're doing, and making sure that you're actually being authentic and, you know, true when you're saying, I'm doing all that I can do.
Yeah, and maybe closing up shop here, because I think that's the gems, right? That's the pearls right there. Um, I I don't really want, and if you're a repeat listener, don't let this become your analysis by paralysis. We're giving you information here. We're giving you tools here. We're giving you stuff that you can use to change yourself, to change your life. But don't let it be the thing that's keeping you from doing stuff, right? Like, when you get the gems, when you get the pearls, get out of here. Like, you can come back, you know, watch some more videos, get some more information, learn more, do what you're doing in your life. But don't not act on this stuff, because this is important for your own development, right? If you want to get what you want, if you want to get where you want in your life, you got to start doing stuff. You got to start taking action. So I don't know if maybe Maybe you have some closing things that you want to say, get people energized, motivated, whatever. But I think it's just important to remember you need to do.
I think it's something that we're either going to do or you're not, and that's tough, and that can be like, oh well, but what if I'm kind of just caught in a place where I can't? Well, then plan to do something. If everybody always kind of has these excuses like, well, but I can't do this right now, but I'll be willing to do this. Well, then fine, plan. Think about it. Give this some thought. If you can't do this right now because you're driving or you're at work or you're somewhere where you're just listening to this and you're not able to do this, don't lose this idea, because this idea is what gets you to the finish line. This idea of setting up a daily process to not only get you somewhere efficiently, but also build fortitude and momentum and kind of an acceptance of the situation that you're in, because you can accept it because you know that you are doing everything that you can. I mean, honestly, I think we've pretty much covered it. There's not much else I can really say we haven't hit on this. What do you think?
Dude, I don't honestly, most of the time when you say stuff, it's almost like you're speaking what's already in my head. I'm just like, okay. Yeah. I mean, if maybe you're listening and you're ready to move, like you're ready to go and take action, but there's not anything to do. Like you already know what it is that you need to do. We're not telling you anything that you don't need to know. I think it's just important to remember all over it, right? So when this video ends, when this audio closes out, when you stop, kind of remembering what Dan's talking about percolating in your little brain, right? Go do a thing that helps you move toward a goal, because that's really how you get there, right? That's really how you're going to feel better. You're gonna get the things in life that you want. You'll be energized because you'll start seeing yourself making moves, right? And everyone wants to be that person who's making moves towards the life that they want, right? The lifestyle they want, the status they want, the money they want, being around the people that they want, right? Everyone wants to be in that position, but sometimes we get blocked up, right? Sometimes we get kind of pulled back, right, by our own preconceived notions or fears or whatever. So I think it's important to just maybe get started and get started now. So I don't really have anything else maybe that we need to talk about. I don't know if you want to give some closing remarks, but if not, I think we should close up shop, man.
Happy New Year.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon.